In the tapestry of life, where every thread holds a story, America in black and white emerges as a haven for the voices echoing through the heart of our communities. In this podcast, we wade through the rivers of our collective experiences, celebrating the vibrant hues of change brought forth by the whispers of hope and the roars of action. It's more than just a conversation. It's a journey into the heart of our society, illuminated by the light of those daring to dream and do. Join us, and let your voice be the melody that guides us toward a dawn where every color finds its place in the masterpiece of our shared destiny. Together, let's paint a future brimming with the positives that dwell in our minds and the actions that shape our world.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of America in Black and White, where we delve into the underserved and marginalized communities and how we'd like to inspire and motivate those that need some help as into what's to do next in their life. Tonight, we have a very special guest. We have Dr. King Imani. Dr. King Imani has dedicated his career to fighting for equality and for equity, for equality and inclusion throughout diverse industries. His education includes business management, organizational leadership, and global international management. He has ample experience in employment law, contract law, urban planning and development, operational strategy, corporate cultural sensitivity, and strategic management. He holds a doctorate in management, organizational leadership, an MBA and MED, a Juris Master, and a BA in global management. His dissertation titled Exploring How African American Women Navigate Their Entrepreneur Journeys, an exploratory case study. The research focused on entrepreneurship, access to capital, funding, and adverse challenges faced in establishing and developing a venture business. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you all to Dr. King Imani. Hello, sir. How are you this evening?
I'm well, and yourself?
I am excellent. Thanks for being on the show.
No problem, no problem. I look forward to speaking with you.
Is there anything you'd like to add to your bio before we delve into the show?
No, I think that's good.
Well, let's start here with the your career in organizational leadership. Can you tell our audience what motivated you to pursue a career in organizational leadership?
I most certainly can. My motivation stemmed from a desire to make a tangible impact on organizations by shaping their culture and strategic direction. I've always believed that effective leadership is essential to achieving both organizational success and individual success. And so that kind of catapulted me into that direction.
Okay. And so, but with that, was that from like personal experience, or is that just something that you just saw the need to do?
It's something that I just saw the need to do. Growing up, I never liked my name being King, but it gave me, I guess, a passion and a desire to lead people in a way, in a very humble way. A lot of people think, oh, I'm getting big headed or something about it. But that's never been the case. I actually never was called King growing up. I hated that name. But coming into myself, I found that I had some leadership qualities, and I just dove into it. And organizational leadership was the precipice to that.
So, what leadership qualities do you believe are most critical for success today?
Great question. Vision, empathy, adaptability, communication. Those are all essential qualities I feel and believe help nurturing and navigating complex and diverse environments. Um, I think that if you don't have that, you're not going anywhere as a leader, honestly.
Mm. So then the old age question that I remember as I was a kid. is, do you believe leaders are natural, born, or made?
Wow, that is actually a very good question. I remember when I embarked upon my doctoral journey, that was a question that was asked of us a lot. And obviously, there's no right or wrong answer, but I honestly feel that leaders are born. You can make somebody into a leader, but I feel like with that, you're still going to be missing some of the essential qualities or things in which can't be nurtured or developed, things that just have to be innate. So I honestly believe that leaders should be born.
How do you approach leading diverse teams effectively?
I emphasize inclusivity by valuing each team member's perspective. I think that it's important to value all thought partners in a situation. And I also believe that in order to make a decision, it has to be a team effort. And so I feel that when you're leading diverse teams effectively, you also have to listen and garner all of the support necessary to move the needle.
Mm. So just as you did, well, I guess you had to build your team. What are some of the qualities that you were looking for in team members in building a team?
I look for natural born leaders for sure. I look for people who are not afraid to say the thing that most people won't say. I look for people that kind of stand out, and even those that kind of die off into the back sometimes too. Honestly, I have a very easygoing, kind of natural way of going about things when I'm looking for leaders or team members. And I classify them as leaders. I never classify them as team members because I feel that everybody, leads in their own right. But what I attempt to look for is just innate abilities, whether it be somebody who's good at computers or somebody who's well-rounded or versed on, readings or, just always has the answer. And whatever that answer is or whatever that person is great at, I find that some way, somehow, just by having a very casual conversation. It's never formal.
So, where are some of the places that you normally recruit people when you're team building? How do you recruit?
You know what? It's crazy. I have such a, a large and broad network of individuals in which I consult with and just talk to on a regular, whether they're associates or personal friends, to the point where I really don't look far nowadays. I literally go onto my phone or put out a text message or an email to my network, and they kind of send them my way. And people know who I am. I'm always king every time you meet me, so you don't want to get anything different. And hey, I'm lucky, I guess, in that aspect. And I don't believe in luck, but I guess in that sense, I am pretty lucky because I never really have to search far.
So, what are some of the most significant challenges you faced as a leader?
Ooh, managing conflict and navigating resistance
Oh,
to change.
wow.
Um, People are afraid of change. It doesn't matter how long someone's been doing something. You could have been doing it for 5 minutes or 50 years. People are afraid of change. And managing that, navigating that, I have to always find the balance. And for me, that's difficult at times because it kind of bends me in ways that I probably would dislike or go against if, in fact, I had an option to choose differently. But balancing diverse viewpoints while steering the team has to probably be the most difficult. But I find a camaraderie and I establish a common ground for us all, and we go from there.
So, and just thinking about that, and you when you think about the pushback that you get, as you were mentioning, like normally, what are some of the things that when you get that pushback? What are some of the things that have been put out that that you're expecting that you get the pushback from?
When most pushback that I get, because I'm pretty diplomatic, um, the most pushback that I've received is when I inherit a team of individuals and we're changing some system or policy that they have been functioning literally, and I say functioning in a very casual way, because not productive in my eyes. And the company brought me in more times than most to assist with transitioning that out because it wasn't, it wasn't great. But I get a lot of pushback there because people are afraid to learn new things. And honestly, some people are so used to and immune to doing things how they're doing. I don't want to say wrong, but doing how they're doing it to the point where they are fearful of having to learn something new, especially when a new person comes into, the mode and you have to, wow them. I tell people, you don't have to wow me, just do your jobs and we'll all be great. And I think that being as diplomatic and easygoing as I am, that has benefited me because it's only a little resistance at first, but I get in there and roll up my sleeves and, do the work with them. So I think it makes it a little bit easier.
So, as our audience is listening tonight, and let's just say we have some folk out there that are kind of like on the fence of maybe having the inabilities maybe to learn as there's a new process, or have the inability to like not even wanting to do a new process. What are some of the things that you can advise them on as to what can make things a little bit easier and better for them?
Well, I was brought up, my grandmother used to always say, when I would leave home or go and do something that was different, she would say, you can always come back home. And so when I'm advising organizations or companies or people in general, I tell them, you can always go back home. Whatever that home base is, you can always go back there. But don't be afraid to do better, be better, and see better. If in fact you, I guess, stunt your growth in some ways, I like to classify that as you'll never know the true potential of what's there. So you have to just go at it. And honestly, you can't be afraid to take risk in business. And I always tell people that all the time. They always saying scared money doesn't make money, and it doesn't get promotions either. So you can't be afraid to go at it.
Right. So how do you define transformational leadership in your work?
Whew. Transformational leadership. Transformational leadership is about inspiring and motivating others to exceed their potential. My job as a leader is to help them find that or source whatever light they need within themselves to do that. It's about driving change and modeling integrity and supporting individuals' growth. And I think as a leader, that is what I try or attempt to do effortlessly, at all turns. And I think that's important and crucial for any leader to ensure that they're looking or sifting through that to make sure that happens.
And so when you but when you think of transformational leadership, and let's say you've got these folk that you're trying to mold and you're trying to make them into this individual that they have the capabilities of doing. What are some of the things that are some of the tools that you use when it comes to transformational leadership that you implement to help them to be better?
I like to say that I'm a people's person. So I try to foster a culture of creativity and shared purpose. And honestly, that's truly the only tools that I use. As I'm thinking back and reflecting on things, I've gained buy-in so easily from people over time from being the caliber of leader that I am, and not to, boost my ego or anything like that. But I am a hands-on leader. I'm not a desk person. Sitting here at this desk right now is like, oh, it's for a great cause, let me do it. But I'm not a desk leader. And so I truly get out there and foster that creativity and look for all the things in which people didn't know they had within themselves, ever. And I help nurture those things and we master them together. And honestly, those are the tools that I always stoop down and look for to help move the needle.
It definitely seems like, for you being the leader that you are, you definitely have like a very cool, level-headed, this even keel personality that it's got to seem like it's kind of like an accepting thing for and easy for people to work with you. So has anyone ever just not been able to, I guess you call it, got a good read from that kind of vibe?
You know what? Over time, when people see my name on papers or when I'm introduced via email or something without a picture or anything, people are like, actually, my last job, and she's one of my best friends now. I won't say her name. She'll probably cringe. Um, she said that she made it up in her mind not to like me. She saw me on paper. She was like, "Oh no, I'm not doing this." But when they meet me, it was almost like an instant friendship. I mean, we used to be together endlessly when we worked at the same company, and now
Right.
we still talk. If she goes out of the country, she'll call me. You know, wherever she is, we always talk, and she'll send me these things all throughout the day, like on Instagram and stuff. You know, when your work friend becomes your best friend, and so it's really great to know that. But she had it set in her head that she was not going to like me. I can tell you that, and she's not the first person, but she was just the most direct. She told me
Right.
that the first day.
Oh wow.
Okay.
So, so what advice would you give to aspiring organizational leaders?
Whew. Oh, it's crazy just to think that I'm in a position to give advice to anybody sometimes. I laugh at that, knowing where I come from. But focus on continuous learning, build emotional intelligence, be authentic. Um, Leading is truly about the people, and as long as you're always your authentic self and you gain that buy-in at the beginning, don't try to be firm or hard or anything like that, or try to implement or change all these things. Just go in and remember that human behavior is essential to you staying true to your values, and it's essential to inspiring others.
Hmm. So, something that you mentioned prior to, you giving that wonderful response. When you mentioned, from like where you come from, I mean, like, can you tell us how did that come about?
um when you say how did that come about,
You coming from the humble beginnings to where you are now, like, how did that story materialize to get you to Dr. King Imani today?
you know what, I was raised by a single parent. And it's crazy because I never say that I come from humble beginnings or anything like that. I was fortunate to have two parents. Although my mom was a single parent, I was fortunate enough to have two parents that believed in education. And I like to say now the main thing in which my parents agreed on was that education was never optional. That was their parenting tool, and they used it to their advantage. All of my siblings, we have an education. My sister, my oldest sister, she started it off. She has 2 or 3 masters and a doctorate. Um, my mom made things fun for us. She never pushed us to doing anything in particular. Whatever we wanted to do, she stood behind us and made sure that we mastered it. She was always that ear to listen or that helping hand. And honestly, I don't know life any other way because that's all that I know and that's what I came from. And so it's my story, and I hate talking about myself, honestly, but it's now so easy for me to do it because it helps people, in whatever ways in which they internalize it. It's helped them. So if I can do that, that's a line with my purpose, and I just love to do it now. And so,
I appreciate you taking the time to really answer that question because just at this point in time, as you mentioned, education. We don't know what the education system is going to look like here in the near future. You know, but just as we think about it for people that look like you and I, where it's a very strong foundational thing for you. The whole premise of that is to like what can we do at this point, just jumping off this for a little bit, what is it that we can do from an educational perspective to continue to inspire and motivate the young men and women that look like you and I?
that is a phenomenal question. And I say that because I have a business partner. We have a company, it's called Academics Only Please. And it is a company that we developed in 2020 when we were both writing our dissertation or finishing our dissertations. and we were having lunch, and we knew that, you know, the generation now, they were or are not brought up the same way in which we are. They don't think that education is essential, and they hear all these different fads and things and news about, you know, going into debt over education. I am a firm believer that when you know better, you do better, and it doesn't have to be fun, but it should be necessary, because you have to have something to fall back on or lean into when times get rough, or when you're trying to understand and comprehend the complexities of the world we live in currently.
Right.
If you don't have the fundamental aspects or things of needed to, you know, understand, then you're not going to get too far. And luck and all the other stuff that people might or may not believe in, that's fine. But you have to have a foundation. And I feel that education is that foundation. Now, do I believe in going into debt over all these things? No, but, you know, work hard, get scholarships, whatever you can, write essays, whatever, get something to move yourself on that train to wherever you're going.
So, can you share an example of a time when your leadership approach created a lasting impact?
Oh, so many. But in a previous role, I led a team through a cultural transformation. And it improved the employee retention and engagement tremendously. And it's crazy because the way in which we were going to measure it initially was not the way in which we measured it in conclusion of everything in which I was brought in to do. But this measurement was the most crucial aspect of measurement for them, because they had such high turnover and retention issues. But by focusing on transparent communication styles and general and genuine feedback, we achieved a 70% retention rate for the company, and it was astronomical to them. But I'm like, well, you guys did the work. You guys had the tools the whole time. You know, you just need to learn how to use them. And it was something that I've leaned on endlessly up until this point. And the company, they rat and rave about me still, and I still call whenever they need somebody to come in and do whatever. Even if I'm not the primary person, they call me to source the primary person. I left a lasting impression, and I love that for them and myself, actually.
So, how has your understanding of leadership evolved over your career?
You know what? Initially, I saw leadership as mainly like decision making and like an authoritarian, you know, position. Over time, I've come to realize that leadership it's more of a collaborative effort, or process rather, and it requires you to really truly go in and wrap your arms around whatever it is that you're essentially trying to lead, whether it's a product or employees, staff, associates, whatever. You have to find your footing, and you have to ground yourself in that.
So, a term you mentioned before, emotional leadership. Can you tell us, what role does emotional intelligence play in leadership?
It's at the core of effective leadership. It allows leaders to navigate complex interpersonal dynamics. And honestly, if you don't have emotional intelligence, you can't manage people, because people are emotional. And as personal or as strict as I used to be on, you know, leave your problems at the door when you come in, you got to get to work. We can't, the company isn't paying or spending money, you know, to resolve or solve our issues. I've come to realize that my EI has gone up tremendously over time from understanding people and understanding that behaviors are going to happen, and you have to have emotional intelligence to manage those things.
Can I ask you this, and you know, just to help, I think our audience understand a little bit more. When you mentioned emotional intelligence, can you tell us, how does that intersect with critical thinking?
If those two things don't coincide, they will collide. Um, um, intersect. They have to meet. They have to meet. One
Okay.
without the other is null and void. You have to have a certain level of emotional intelligence to critically think, critically believe, critically read, critically go throughout your day. You
Mhm.
have to have emotional intelligence to understand or comprehend the fundamentals of what's necessary and needed to move from point A to point B to point C, and
Mhm.
D, E, F if you need to as well. If you
Mhm.
don't have that, I don't think that you're going too far.
Mhm. So, so when you think about just a lot of people in general, especially from a leadership perspective, um, do you think that, well, can you give us your opinion that if you don't have good critical thinking skills, then should you be considered a leader, or is that not going to make that possible at all?
My opinion. um, that is one thing that I spoke on earlier. Well, something that came to mind. If you don't have critical thinking abilities,
Mhm.
that's something that you can't really nurture or garner. In my opinion, you kind of have to have that innately to, you know, get across the bridge.
Mhm.
Um, And I think that's honestly one of the biggest issues with nepotism sometimes. When you put people in these positions to lead or function in whatever capacity they are functioning in, you're incapable of succeeding in that because you don't know how to critically think sometimes, or you lack bits and pieces of emotional intelligence that should not lack. And unfortunately, the world goes round, but
So, can you tell us what strategies do you use to foster innovative or innovation within an organization?
hmm. I encourage a culture of experimentation and open dialogue. Um, I provide employees with the autonomy to explore ideals, fail, and learn from mistakes, and foster a mindset of innovation. I think that fosters a mindset of innovation, rather. And as long as they have those key aspects, for me, um, innovation is what's bred from that.
So let me just let me tell you how I see a little bit of this, and you just kind of like help me to come in the line. Like when I think of innovation, I think more on the lines of, more than just a creative process, but having the ability to pretty much take something and basically make it a masterpiece and create this beautiful um object, scene, characteristics, report, whatever have you, to make it to the point that everybody can see it, they can read it, they can understand it, they can know it, they can love it. And it's something that has a mainstay that can stay as long as they want to until they want to take it to a much higher plane. Does that sound about right?
Agree. It can be timeless or adapt as needed.
Okay. So let's transition over to your advocacy for DEI. And can you tell us what inspired your dedication to advocate for DEI?
You know what? Growing up, I witnessed the impact of inequity firsthand. Well, let me not say that. Every time I am asked something similar to that, I say that I witnessed it firsthand. I didn't experience it. For it didn't happen to me directly. I was never called anything bad or out of my name, whether it be in the household or on the streets. That just didn't happen to me growing up.
Mhm.
But as I moved through my career, I realized from seeing things that happen to other people, um, that I was always an advocate for DEI stuff because I was always hypersensitive to how people felt after those bad things happened to them. And understanding that I had a voice and I was a very direct and forthcoming individual, there was a sense of protection or advocacy, I guess, in that, for lack of a better word, that I took on in those moments. Obviously, I didn't classify it at that time, but as I've grown up, I understood that was a key factor in driving organizational success, and creating environments where everyone can thrive. Me just advocating or being that voice of reason in those times or in those moments has truly been a saving grace throughout my career, even when it's been to my demise.
And so, do you agree with most that when we think about DEI, do you think that that was one of those things that really helped people that look like you and I, or did it not?
I laugh at times when I just think about some of the things that I've heard over the years.
Mm-hmm.
DEI might have been a stepping stone for us to be realized by other people, but DEI has always been embedded in everything that this country stands on in the world. It's not even a something that we can take for ourselves. It's everywhere. And even when I talk to people or I'm consulting on DEI stuff, I tell people that I'm a DEI hire, but not because I'm African American or Black or a brown person. I'm a DEI hire because I have almost 6 degrees. I am a very forthright person. I'm not a distasteful person, but I'm not always digestible to everybody. And so me being different brings in diversity. And honestly, people only see color a lot of times when they see DEI, but that's not, what it is. It's more than color. It's education, is level of intellect, is speech, articulation, comprehension, all of those things. And I don't think that we always consider all those things. And as fortunate or as unfortunate as it might be, DEI can never be taken away. It's always going to exist as long as you have people. What does the song say? We're yellow, black, and white. We are precious in the sight. Jesus loves the little children of the world. I mean, we're DEI. We're different. We just need more inclusivity.
How can organizations move beyond performative DEI efforts to create lasting change?
They must integrate it into their core values, policies, practices. This requires leadership commitment, though. Measurable goals. You have to really, truly be measuring something and not things just to check a box. You have to hold people accountable. It's also essential to fostering a culture that allows continuous dialogue and learning around DEI. DEI is not just a concept that you bring in and you say, oh, this is a one pager or a white paper on it. Let's, dive into it and make it great. No, DEI needs innovation as well. You have to be innovative in your efforts and want that to happen for it to be possible.
Now, when I listen to your answer, and now this is a place I really don't want to go, but I think people need to really, really get a grasp as to what you just explained. Now, when we think about where we are right now in these days and times, we're now supposedly, quote unquote, everything is evolved or has a problem because of DEI. Everything is wrong because of DEI. And DEI was supposedly, quote unquote, is something that's just there because, it benefited folk that look like you and I. And so, I mean, kind of like if you can just expound just a little bit more to explain, to those that are listening, especially that what's being put out now in the media when they cover that crap, because it's just wrong. I'm just going to say that's wrong.
Yeah.
help us to understand a whole lot more about where this is going and why this is being said from your opinion.
I'm going to use an example. For all intents and purposes, our current president is a DEI hire. Now, great or not, he is in fact a DEI hire. He lacks credentials.
Mm-hmm.
He lacks emotional intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
He lacks empathy. He lacks all of the core things that we have as requirements for presidents. He's not even a political person.
Mm-hmm.
And he lacks leadership capacity.
Mm-hmm.
That is a DEI hire, as inappropriate as the majority might assume it is, especially now, also those who voted for him then.
Mm-hmm.
He is in fact a DEI hire.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever impediments or disabilities, are associated or assigned to that, he is in fact a DEI hire. And I think that it is golden to understand it on this side of things, and it's even more golden that he doesn't understand it, but he always downs it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when people really start to look into those things, I mean, to be nice about it, he is not the first pick for a president if in fact you were to line him up against every other president that we've had to date.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you consider that, he is diverse in that regard, and we're being equitable by giving him the opportunity and being inclusive by allowing him to even sit in the Oval Office. And so I think that as dysfunctional or unfunctional or conventional as it might be, we have to understand it in that way sometimes to make it make sense for us all. And hopefully one day he gets it.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that was a great way of explaining it.
Well, I want you to know I love your answer. And as a matter of fact, I hope you don't mind, but there's some parts of what you just said. I have to use that. I really do. Because you could have said that no better. Because when we talk about DEI, I never even thought of using that term, but he is definitely a DEI hire.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely. Oh my God. But anyway, let me move on because I don't want us to get caught up in that craziness.
Yes.
But can you share a success story from your DEI advocacy work?
In one of my previous roles, I spearheaded a DEI initiative that resulted in a 6% increase in workforce diversity, around or about 70% improvement in managerial effectiveness. And I did so by embedding DEI into the recruitment, training, and leadership development processes that were in place. We created a more inclusive environment for everybody in the company. I mean, they were ranting and raving about how I didn't strip away what they knew. I just re-engineered or developed what they already had into something that was more of a clear cut process than what they were going through initially. And honestly, I really didn't do much. I just made people understand that there is a fundamental something in here. We have to see what that is, and everybody needs to be on one accord. You can't have your perception of the company's mission here and then another perception of the company's mission here, and you're straddling the fence on all of those things. No, it has to be a clear-cut mission, and you have to abide by that. And until people do that, you really can't move forward in anything. But it worked for them, and I'm glad that they got their numbers up and they are flourishing now for sure.
Wow. So I mean, so do you have you done created a whole bunch of these different projects that's had the same success story for the places that you've worked with?
I do. It's funny, even when I've had not so great bosses or experiences at companies where I was actually an employee and not like a consultant for, it's almost like a bad breakup. They say that I'm great, they just can't be with me. And I think sometimes it's because I'm not a dweller. And a lot of times I've come to realize that people like to dwell in mess or bad whatever. And I'm
Mm,
not that person. I'll talk about it and have a conversation one time, but I'm not going to keep on, jarring through something that, I mean, I'm going to have the same opinion. Like I told you at the beginning of the call, king is always king. And if in fact I'm wrong about something, I'll transition my thinking or thought processes around it. But if in fact I'm not, we can talk about it a million one times, but it's not going to change my perception or how I perceive it to be. And I think that a lot of people attempt to do that sometimes. And maybe it's because they're used to dealing with less thick-skinned people. I don't know, but I'm just not that person. And it's benefited me, and I've done great things. And I've said goodbye many times because things just didn't work.
So, what steps can leaders take to address unconscious biases in their organizations?
Leaders must lead by example. Um, and being aware of their own biases and promoting education and unconscious biases is something that is easier said than done, but that's where self-reflection comes in. And that's something that I do in the moment at times, like in the moment coaching. I'll self-reflect on something if in fact I feel like I'm going to respond indifferently or be on the fence about something. You got to implement some kind of blind recruiting processes as well, into some of these companies. And I think a lot of times when you are the hiring manager and you are the onboarding manager and you are all of these things in that process, you have to remove yourself sometimes so that you don't develop biases, because you're so involved in a process in which, sometimes you can delegate certain things. And I think delegation is a big thing that a lot of times we don't do. And inherently, you develop biases because you don't delegate things enough. And when your mind is on everything, you don't have enough time to really fulfill the things that you need to and to fill those voids or holes that breed unconscious bias.
Mm. How can organizations measure the success of their DEI initiatives?
Um, I say go to the people, employee surveys, diversity metrics, retention rates, qualitative feedback. Really get to the nitty gritty of what the employees are thinking. Don't ask for closed-ended questions on a survey. Ask them what they think and look for themes in that after you ask what they think. And if there are a lot of themes that people have this shared opinion on what's going wrong, then we have some work to do. Let's go back to the drawing board. But if in fact those themes vary, we have a company of forward thinkers and thought leaders who might potentially help us move in a similar direction. And I think when considering that, we have to develop strategies that we can move the needle on with certain things in those themes that we see populate at those times.
Hmm. So, what challenges do you see in implementing DEI strategies in today's workplace?
Resistance to change, lack of leadership buy-in, um, honestly, it's the change. People didn't know that it existed always. It being forced into certain companies just to check a box, I think, has been the thing that we've really truly had to overcome. Um, but that requires patience and commitment, um, and a strategic approach, honestly. You got to educate yourself and look at all levels and go into the organization and truly break it down to the bones sometimes and make sure that everybody's reinforced with the way forward.
Now, again, you are definitely you're giving me a whole new shape here as we've because I've had people on before that's talking about DEI, and I know it could be many, many things. I want you to give us your opinion
Mhm.
when it comes to DEI. Are you for or against it, and why?
I am for it because it's inevitable. There is no way around it. When you bring leaders together, you're going to have diversity by default because nobody's going to think the same. And if in fact they do, I don't know how the company sustains at that point. But I'm for it because what we fail to realize is that equity is the true goal. We need equity. We honestly we need that. That's the true goal. Inclusion is the problem that people have an issue with because diversity is always there. And
Mhm.
so we need to rearrange our thought around it. The D shouldn't come first. The
Okay.
inclusion aspect should come first. Diversity is going to come by default. I mean, you put us in the room together. We're two different people, obviously. Um, we're not going to agree on everything.
Right.
And I think that that is the fundamental issue in which a lot of people have because they think the D stands for, they think the D is a C and it has nothing to do with color. Diversity is something that we all have by default. We, like I said, are the same color, but we have probably have very different viewpoints on a list of things. And understanding that diversity is always going to be there, that's not the goal. Diversity is always going to be there. Equity is the goal. We need equity, and inclusion is us giving the opportunity to allow equity to surface.
Mhm.
And honestly, like I said, I think that we're arguing or conceptually considering this in a very different way a lot of times when the conversation is had about DEI. But I'm for it, and I will never be against it. People can spin the story or change the acronym however many times they want to, but I know what it means to me, and
Mhm.
that's how I am successful in my efforts always because equity is always the goal.
Mm. So with our folk that we target here from the show, which are the underserved and marginalized communities, with the concept in which you just explained DEI, what are some of the most important things that they should take from what you're just saying and learn how to implement?
Know what your end goal is. Understand that fairness or equity is what you want in the end. Understand that inclusion is being given the opportunity. Diversity is going to come by default because you and your friends can go up for 1,000,001 jobs or establish 1,000,001 companies. And it's not rocket science. We're going to have difference of opinions, but you have to have a common goal in mind for it to really truly work. And equity should be that goal. And as long as you understand that and firmly grasp that and hold on to it and go after it, you'll be successful. Because fairness is what you want, and it's not only going to benefit you; it's going to be a domino effect for those and all those that come after you and before you, and and so on and so forth.
Mm. So, how do you approach educating educating others about the importance of equity and inclusion?
Hmm. Um, honestly, I engage in open and honest conversations. And when conversations go array or go left or whatever, I use data to illustrate the benefits of DEI. And from my time with working with it, uh, even before I classified myself as an advocate or consultant in that space, I was always doing it because again, I had that voice and I looked at those people who were, not getting the opportunity or being left behind. And I always tell people it's important to connect with DEI efforts and both personal values and organizational performance. You can only gain support and understanding through explaining all of those things and making sure that you're having the conversations. And a lot of times the conversations are being steered away from or brushed under the rug or whatever people do with them, but you got to have them
Mhm.
or else you're going to be in the same place. Even if you feel like you're progressing, there's going to be some regression there somewhere for sure. If in fact you're not having those conversations.
Now, I love staying in the present because, staying in the present, basically helps you to stay focused and helps you to stay forward.
Hmm.
Now, I want to go back and I want to ask you a different question, for where we've been so far with DEI.
Mhm.
And I want to ask you if you can help us to understand when DEI was first implemented. That was somewhere around the early part of the 20th century, if I'm not mistaken.
Mhm.
So, what happened in between, let's say, 19th century, coming into the 20th century, and coming in here into the 21st century, that has made DEI important, but now here in the present is being stripped away? What happened then to now that it was needed?
Well, I first like to say that more people who look like us found their voice,
Hmm.
which created an issue for people who didn't look like them or us.
Hmm.
I'll also say that how we once measured it, when we found our voice, it was being measured differently, not only by us, but by the people who opposed it.
Hmm.
And in that difference of measurement, I feel that a lot of people or other people who oppose it, um, they find it problematic because they are starting to see us and realize that although we were always there, we're not just seen and not heard anymore. We're being heard and we're being very vocal about it. And this is a different generation of individuals coming up and ratting and raving and finding ways to market it. And they don't see the benefit is totally for them anymore. It's not just a fad or something they can do to, gain whatever workforce credits they can get for, hiring people. I think that now it's working to their disadvantage, and that's why honestly it's different and for some people problematic, which is why they want it to go away.
So, now I have one last follow up for that, because when you say that, oh my God, I mean, it just popped like 15 million things in my mind. And I'm gonna say something about what I do here for this platform. And so maybe you can maybe there's some things that maybe you can help me to iron it out so the creases really look sharp.
Okay.
Um, when I think about a lot of things that's happening, especially from a media perspective,
Hmm.
when I started this platform for one reason, and that is I wanted to make sure that people that look like you and I, will always have a voice, and that we will have a voice of reason that would always inspire and motivate. But I wanted to also make sure that I build, uplift, and expand the communities where people that look like us, can learn what to do and how to make those things happen. Now, when we talk about, like media outlets and media situations,
Hmm.
because eventually that's what we will be evolving into, such a media outlet. My thing is, because the purpose and the focus is to build, uplift, and connect our communities. Now, of course, we come in many hues around this
Hmm.
world because we are the majority of the folk around this world, 98%. My thing to you is this. Um, do you think creating outlets, or, media outlets, that's basically more so telling our stories, telling things that are happening around the world in our communities for people to be more informed of? Do you think that that in itself is a good thing or a bad thing? Because it may be it's going to be most likely or probably be telling the story from an opposite perspective. Do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing when it comes to equity and inclusion?
If stories aren't told, then they'll forever be unknown.
Mhm.
I think the more the merrier, honestly.
Mhm.
But when it comes to that, I'm by default a researcher now, and I critically think about everything. And I think about the themes that will come out of those stories being told. And if you hear it from multiple avenues, from multiple people, from multiple perspectives, I think that there is a benefit in it for everyone. I've come to realize and associate now with the thought process that people that are other than me or look differently than I do, or even that look like me who are just less informed, are in fact just less informed. And it's because they didn't have an avenue or an outlet to, or silo, whatever you want to classify it as, to go and gather or garner information that could be beneficial and useful to them. I'll give a really, really quick but great story. When I went into undergrad at Kansas State University, I was there that Friday. My roommate didn't get in until that Saturday or Sunday morning. I can't remember exactly the day. I won't say his name, but he was a person from Omaha, Nebraska. And he was not the same color, hue, or anything as me. I was asleep on my top bunk. You know, they have like the little bunk and the studio thing underneath it. And him and his mom and his dad, I think, was out in the car, but they were coming in like throw off in the room. And he saw that I had my side set up. I'm a little OCD like that. So everything was set up on my side like in one day. So he actually did come on Saturday. It was like 7 something in the morning. And when he came into the room, he said, "Oh my God, Mom, he's black." And obviously I'm a light sleeper. So when I heard it, I was like, let me just stay under here. And so I didn't pop up or get up abruptly or anything. I just stayed under there and acted like I was asleep. And obviously, time went on. I had to eventually get up. And so I got up very slowly, and they were out of the room at this point in time. But as I opened the door, they're right there. And his mom, the nicest person in the world, I think she was like a nurse or something. She was like, "Hi, I'm such and such, and this is such and such." And I was like, "Oh, nice to meet you guys." They were like, "We're gonna get out your way in a moment. We'll let you guys, be to yourselves. We're gonna come back tomorrow and take you guys out to dinner if you're open to it." I was like, "Oh, sure." Time went on. Me and him became the closest of roommates and the closest of friends. We had some classes and stuff together. He was actually a year ahead of me, though. He had transferred in from another school. He actually told me, as we were walking home, I didn't drink or anything at this point in time. We were coming home from a party that we had gone to for some of his friends. They had kegs and stuff everywhere. He left because he saw that I wasn't, having a great time. And when we were on our walk back to our dorm, he told me, "Man, I'm so sorry. I freaking love you. When I came in, I was nervous, to have a black roommate." He's like, "Because I'd never come in such close proximity with a black person." He was like, being from Omaha, Nebraska, I very rarely saw them in my school. I might pass them at a store or something, but it was never a conversation had. None of them lived in my neighborhood, so on and so forth. And I thought to myself, well, how can you live in a world like that? Because that was not my experience being from Illinois. And I came to the conclusion in that moment that people that are different are truly, in fact, different. They have different experiences, they have different upbringings, they have different outcomes, they have different everything. And I had to take that into consideration before I found hate or disdain or anything in my heart, especially when interacting with people who I knew that I would not be able to, get around or just exist or coexist with. That wasn't an option for me growing up or ever. And so I found in that moment that you just had to be open and understand that sometimes it's the lack of knowledge. And if the stories aren't being told, then in fact, you will be in the dark about a list of things and you'll come off as oblivious or stupid or unknowing or whatever. And unfortunately, it's to their demise. But there's not enough people like you and I who are open to creating those outlets or media forums where they can get another story or perspective, because hopefully there's people that don't look like us listening now, because it may shape the way in which they think moving forward.
That's very true. And I can just imagine though,